Welcome to Community Crypto on CoinDesk TV. I'm your host, Isaiah Jackson, and this week we are discussing El Salvador's continuing Bitcoin and blockchain experiment with two amazing guests. I'm joined now by Leo Elduayen, CEO of Koibanx, and Fabrício Tota, Director of Mercado Bitcoin. Welcome to the show, guys.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you for having us, Isaiah.
Absolutely.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for inviting.
Absolutely, likewise. So let's start with you, Leo. You are the CEO of Koibanx. Tell us a little bit about Koibanx and the work you do in the industry.
Sure. So Koibanx, it's an asset tokenization company. We've been tokenizing financial assets and integrating crypto for banks and tier 2 financial institutions in Argentina, Uruguay, Colombia, Mexico, and most recently El Salvador for the last 6 years.
Love to hear it. And Fabrício, same question to you. Tell us about the growth of Mercado Bitcoin and the work you do in the industry as well.
Sure. Mercado Bitcoin is the largest cryptocurrency exchange here in Latin America. I've been around since 2013 when we have reached more than 3 million clients here in Brazil. We've traded almost 50 billion reais since the last 8 years. And, we act also on tokenization, custody, and education, and so on.
Oh, yeah. A lot of good work from both of you guys. And, recently we've heard the news about El Salvador accepting Bitcoin as legal tender starting September 7th. But there's other aspects to what's being done in El Salvador. So I want to start with you, Leo. With Koibanx, what is some of the blockchain infrastructure that was recently announced that you will be working with in El Salvador?
Well, the government of El Salvador has gone full crypto with its initiative, not only with the Bitcoin law and the development of Chivo wallet that we all know, but they are also exploring blockchain integration for other areas of the government, in particular one that is called the National Registry Center, CNR, and for its initials in Spanish. And they basically handle all the registries, business acts for trademarks, patents, commerce, legal entities books, and different certificates. And we've recently signed a cooperation agreement with the CNR from the El Salvador's government to build that infrastructure on top of the Algorand protocol.
Oh, yeah. And why the Algorand protocol, if I may ask?
For sure. As we all know, there's a bunch of protocols that are rising. Probably these 3.0 blockchains that are coming around. As a philosophy, at Koibanx, we are blockchain agnostic. We work with the protocols that we consider are the most relevant protocols in the ecosystem. We work with Bitcoin, with Lightning Network, with Ethereum, with Algorand, with RSK, with dApps and trials on top of Corda, Hyperledger as well. In particular, we've chosen out the Algorand protocol for El Salvador's case, for the CNR El Salvador's case, because we see in Algorand the scalability to handle hundreds of thousands of transactions in a frequency that is needed for this business type. And at the same time, we see enough decentralization and robustness to handle national records. In the end, it's an entire country infrastructure that is being built on top of it, right? So that's why we've selected Algorand for this particular case.
Sounds like a good choice. And the work that you're doing, you're building in different aspects. And as you just said, they've gone full crypto in El Salvador. So Fabrício, I want to ask you, what does this decision mean for other countries in Latin America and maybe even more specifically in Brazil?
Sure. We are watching this movement in El Salvador, and as a good experiment, don't get me wrong, that it's very important for El Salvador and other surrounding countries. But when you talk about larger countries like Brazil or Mexico or even Colombia, for example, we do not expect to see that on these countries in the short term. But it's very important to see how it goes in El Salvador, and of course that serves as inspiration to other authorities and other countries to experiment with crypto, not as legal tender, that I think is a very long shot for most of the countries, but for registration of other things, just like Leo said.
And let me ask you, Fabrício, do you think the experiment in El Salvador has started off well? Do you think I know people have mentioned a few hiccups technology-wise, but do you think this has started off well as maybe an example for countries in the future?
Yes, I think so. The experiment is going good. I guess, of course, people need to be educated. It's a long run to educate people in a country like El Salvador. You know, the region here, Latin America, has many education challenges. It's no different from El Salvador, Brazil, Argentina, Colombia, Chile, and so on. So education is a big hurdle that we have to work on, and volatility, of course, as they are buying, and they're doing good. They're buying the dips, just like the books say, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And that question. The reason I ask it is it's only been 2 weeks, and some people are already saying, "Hey, this went wrong," or "This didn't happen." And I'm like, "Hey, man, you got to let tech scale." So we do have a long way to go there. And I want to jump back to you, Leo. With Koibanx and some of the work you're doing using the Algorand protocol, can governance in El Salvador, can that change to an extent using the blockchain as well, as far as the president or maybe tech companies?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's the idea behind, I believe, any protocol, but Algorand itself has a very aggressive and clear plan to what they call future finance, right? That it's enabling all different type of financial products to being built on top of it. Particularly in El Salvador, and going back to what you were mentioning before, Isaiah, I agree with you in terms that we need to leave this to scale and to keep its own pace. There's been some up and downs in the launch. As you already know, we've been also involved with some of the crypto integrations for the Chivo wallet. The timeline was very aggressive. But this being said, what El Salvador is doing, it's an example for the rest of the countries. And I do agree with Fabrício in terms of the opportunity, the different types of opportunity for different sizes of countries, if we may. But the key factor for me, it's not only the size of the country, but it's also the currency that they are using. I mean, El Salvador, as many other countries in Central and Latin America, they are US-based economies in terms of that they use the US dollar as their legal tender. So for all of those countries that let's put it in a subtle way, they have a limited monetary policy because they can't issue coin themselves. These alternatives or the crypto alternative, the CBDC, the stable coins, or crypto as legal tender, they do appear as a serious alternative. And I think that we're going to be seeing a lot of them in the short term.
Oh yeah, and I think we will as well. And I also wanted to jump back to what you said before, Leo, as far as the infrastructure being built. Do you think that education is the biggest thing needed in El Salvador for Bitcoin to have wide adoption and for these blockchain projects to take off?
Education and infrastructure, both. Particularly in El Salvador, there's a lot of work being focused right now in connectivity. The telcos are playing a key role over there in order to enable this strategy that the government is putting in place. And education, of course, it's also important, but we as crypto pioneers here, we also need to understand that the education that people need in order to adopt this type of products, it's not probably not the same education that we have in mind. And people is not going to understand necessarily what a consensus protocol is, how does it work, what's a double spend. They just need to understand the use case and trust the system, as we all did with the internet a couple of years, or probably a decade ago. I mean, at the beginning, internet pioneers were discussing the protocol level, TCP/IP, and now they're just discussing what applications to build on top of it, right? I think that's the type of education that's more needed right now.
Right, absolutely. And education infrastructure is needed. But I want to ask you, Fabrício, how do you feel about regulators? Maybe the IMF, the World Bank, they've all stated things towards El Salvador with using Bitcoin as currency. Do you think other countries may stay away because of regulators, or should we work with them long term?
If they will work within the long term, I think regulation is as inevitable as Bitcoin, in fact, is. The the impossibility of blocking or canceling or avoiding Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies also, but especially Bitcoin, is something that we have to deal with. And regulators also, they have to live with the idea and the fact that Bitcoin will resist. So working with regulators is the best way for every country and every company, as we do here in Brazil.
And on the company side, absolutely. But I want to ask, sort of on the ground, the regular, everyday people who are our viewers usually, do they think regulation is good, or are they just going along with it because, hey, what can you do? Do you think, Fabrício, do you think maybe in Brazil or other countries that people on the ground feel this way, or is it more companies that are feeling that way?
Sometimes we as individuals, we do not think about regulation all the time as companies do. But the thing is that it does exist. For you to live in an organized society, we have some kind of regulation. I'm not saying that every step of our day-by-day life needs to be regulated, but it is what makes life possible in a society, right? So the minimal regulation to not to suffocate innovation, but to establish the ground rules for all the companies to get successful, and of course offering good opportunities and services to the customers. I think that's the idea of the minimum amount that it's needed for us to live in a society.
Right. And Leo, jump in there. How do you feel about the regulation side of the industry and companies working with them as well?
For me, the key word, it's not regulation, but it's legal certainty. I mean, with the exception of Venezuela and the Equator in Latin America, cryptocurrencies are legal in all countries. This is something very important, and we get asked, probably Fabrício has the same issue, we get asked a lot about this, like, is Bitcoin legal, or what do you think about turning Bitcoin or any other cryptocurrency legal in Argentina, in Colombia, in Mexico? And the truth is, it's already legal. Most Latin American countries, we bind by the legal principle of anything that's not explicitly prohibited, it's allowed. Under that principle, cryptocurrencies are legal. The problem is that regulators not always take the time and the preparation to really understand new technologies and explain the people and its peers how should the existing regulation accommodate or be interpreted with these new technologies. So when they don't know and they don't have the proper information, just in case, they don't give any opinion, they don't issue any statements. So we individuals or companies from the private sector, since Latin American countries are so famous because regulation, it's a fluid concept that comes back and forth, and we have different interpretations for maybe the same piece of regulation. We remain very careful. And we probably, what Fabrício was saying, we probably don't go as fast as we could in terms of innovation. So in my opinion, what we really need is legal certainty, like regulators to actually step ahead and say, hey, this is already legal. This is the way that you should understand it, even if they're wrong. Because if they're wrong, that's still legal certainty. I mean, you're providing clear guidelines, clear rules, and we can play with that.
Yep. And that's really all you can ask for as a company, right? It's just, like you said, legal certainty. So I know how to operate, how to move, and it's not this gray area that a lot of people have had to operate in. So glad you definitely stated that. And Fabrício, I wanted to jump back to you. When you stated earlier about all the different countries that are larger, maybe adopting or maybe not adopting the same strategy as El Salvador, I wanted to ask you, do you think there is a day in sometime in the future where these other countries will adopt Bitcoin as legal tender, maybe institute blockchain products? Do you think that day will come, or do you think they're way too big and it's only for small countries?
I hope so. I hope this day comes. I think it's. I don't want to say it's inevitable, but probably most of the countries will find a way to put Bitcoin as legal tender. As Leo said, El Salvador and other surrounding countries in Central America, they are a little bit different because they abandoned part of the monetary policy possibilities, adopting US dollar as their currency. So it was adopting Bitcoin as legal tender wasn't that difficult as it would be in Brazil, for example, that the monetary policy issuing new Brazilian reais is an important part of the policy and the instruments people here, the government has to control. So, but I do believe as technology evolves, infrastructure, as Leo said before, also in countries that were much well covered in terms of telecom and use of smartphones are well spreaded. I think it's going to be easier for them to adopt and use Bitcoin as legal tender.
Absolutely. And I want to end here with you, Leo. If you could give an elevator pitch, if you had all the presidents of all the Latin American countries that you named in one room, you give them a quick elevator pitch, what would be your pitch as to why they should make Bitcoin legal tender and use blockchain technology?
Amazing question. It's something that we are actually getting prepared for. So let's get let's give you the early bird of that. So basically, crypto as, I don't know if it's legal tender, but as an alternative for payments and blockchain as an infrastructure at a country level or systemic level. And this means merchant acquisition, it means registry, this means remittances, this means investments. Basically, it empowers people and it empowers the state. I mean, the gross product of every country is going to have a substantial growth with this, and you're not losing, not even control. You're growing in transparency, and you're, most important of all, with this, at the end, this is about people. You're giving people a tool that the system as it is today, they can't access it. And as a governor, your interest is people. And today you're depending on a system that it's kind of outdated, depending on the country, in order to provide them tools that will empower them, and you get to be the enabler of that. I mean, just look at Bukele's public image at El Salvador. The guy has 90% acceptance public image. Even if the opposition is doing some runs against the Bitcoin law, stuff like that, people are seeing the benefit of the measure that he's taken. So the one sentence speech I would give this governor says, become the enabler to empower people. Financially, save them time, save them costs. You can be the face of that.
I love it. Yeah, and I would definitely love to hear that pitch to different presidents in Latin America. But I thank you both for coming on the show today. Thank you, Leo and Fabrício. I appreciate you guys.
Thank you, guys.
Real pleasure, Isaiah. Fabrício, with you as well.
Thank you, Leo.
And that's it for this episode of Community Crypto. I'm your host, Isaiah Jackson, and every week we're building a global community with local crypto groups. So be sure to tune in every Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern on CoinDesk TV. See you then.